Hi, I'm Kathryn Jean Lopez from the National Review Institute, and I'm so grateful for Rose and Ryan Verret making time to talk about marriage. They are the founders of the Witness to Love Marriage Mentoring Ministry and the co-authors of this new book, The Road to Missionary Discipleship, Forming Marriages and Families to Share the Joy of the Gospel. And your ministry is Catholic, but I think it has so much to offer the culture even beyond the Catholic Church. But we'll talk about all those facets, I think, during this conversation. But one of the things I wanted to share, and full disclosure, I'm on the board of Witness to Love. So I'm a little biased. I'm a big fan of the ministry and have been for a long time. But one thing I wanted to share is when I was at the March for Life this year, one of the themes that kept coming out, and in particular there's a new conference called the David Network that's Ivy League students who meet after the March for Life, the day after the March for Life. And I was on a post-Dobbs panel. And it was with Roger Severino, who has worked in government and is at Heritage Foundation right now, and has done very important things and continues to. And Dan Lipinski, who's the former Democratic pro-life congressman, who unfortunately was primaried out because of being a pro-life Democrat. But one of the themes was, as students were asking us, what's the answer to life after Roe? We kept saying to them, it's getting married. It's living virtuously, it's teaching your children, and having children, right? And that's at the heart of your ministry. And this is National Marriage Week. And so that's a hook for talking to you. But this conversation is about so much more, because at the end of the day, politics is not going to save us. Right. Marriage and family is going to save us, right? And so could you just talk a little bit about why you started Witness to Love and why that actually is the case?
Well,
ladies
yes.
first. Thank you. That's a really solid introduction,
Yes,
Kathryn, by the way, and a lot to talk about. We'll see how much we can get in 40 minutes or so.
Yeah,
right.
We're going to have fun just unpacking the introduction to
Well, we'll give out the
Exactly.
roadmap for saving civilization and the Republic over the next 40 minutes. Here we go.
There you go.
But no, it is true that marriage and family is really the bedrock of society, and especially when you live that out through your faith, right? You make choices based on what is going to lead to human flourishing, human happiness, and according to God's plan. So it's not rocket science, but in today's culture it kind of is. So
countercultural.
Yes, it's so countercultural. And I think, just even little snippets of conversations that, our kids bring home, and just the things that if a kid has an iPhone or access to the internet, and the things they watch and see and read, and then they bring that to school, and then they process it on the playground, and then your kids come home with it and it's at the dinner table. So one exposure to something that's, not true, or is a little twisted or a little confusing, next thing it's your dinner conversation. And then we have to have conversations about, well, what does a healthy choice look like? What does living life abundantly actually mean? What brings happiness? What were we created for? And sometimes we have to say that's a after dinner, not with preschoolers conversation. But no, so yes, Witness to Love started because in all the years I had worked in diocesan ministry, and all the years that we had volunteered for diocesan engaged conferences together, and then all the friends we had who were getting married, just seeing that you can get married with more ease than you can get certified in Adobe. And you can get divorced without ever talking to somebody who was involved with your formation. You can get divorced or separated without anyone who was involved in your formation even knowing about it, because you're not plugged into a church community. You don't have someone in your life to hold you accountable. You go talk to your divorced friends for advice, and the ball starts rolling in the wrong direction. So we were just seeing that happen over and over, and really, I would say, desperation in the Holy Spirit, saying, how can we plant firmly in a young couple's life someone they can look up to, that they can be connected to, that's a friend, that's a trusted, safe, confident to turn to. And so instead of assigning a mentor couple, we allowed them to choose a couple whose marriage they admired, and we focused on forming the two couples to walk together before and after the wedding day. That was the turning point. We lowered the divorce rate at the parish over a 5-year period from 23% at the 5-year mark down to 0, to be honest. So, and it was because they were going to church with their mentor couple. They were involved in community. They could reach out for help. They're going to couples prayer groups and Bible studies, and just getting involved in a community. And we all know, if you have peers who are happily married, you're involved in a church community, you pray together daily, you have a support system pushing you together and not pulling you apart. That's what couples need. And that's kind of the miracle that we discovered through Witness to Love. Again, not rocket science, but in today's culture it is. And so that was over 12 years ago, and now it's in over 500 parishes and almost 90 dioceses around the world in 4 languages. So it's just, it's been a blessing. It's been a gift. Ryan always says it belongs to God.
Well,
Yeah.
and you just rattled off those statistics, but it really started in your parish.
Yes.
It was a very homegrown thing, but the need was so great. And one of the really powerful things about it, as you intimated, is a couple who is looking to get married finds another couple and says, you have something we want. And that couple probably responds, bewildered.
Yes.
They're a mess, right? Because if we're honest, most of us think we're a mess. And so it really is a powerful, powerful thing. And it's not, and it's so, like I said, homegrown, community driven, not bureaucratic, and yet the bureaucracies want it. The institutional church knows that this is what it needs.
I think Ryan always says it's a homegrown tomato.
Yeah, you as when you started the conversation, you were referring to being in DC for the march, right? And such an important event that many of your listeners, and obviously has been a big part of our life fundamentally. I would say, would add that to any group that we've spoken with, and many people are groups that we're associated with and serve, highlight the need to protect, obviously, preborn children, any vulnerable life. And I think would also add that the safest place, though, we know for babies and any vulnerable person is going to be within marriage. In fact, yesterday we were with a group of families that we get together with every Sunday, and we pray together with them at 3:00. And it's really fun, and it's a lot of kids. And yesterday the weather was really nice. February 4th in Louisiana, very nice, but you can't sit outside probably in northern part of the country, but we were sitting outside, and all the kids were on a mat. It must have been 25, 30 kids or so, a lot of littles. And the parents were kind of on benches surrounding the kids. And I told Mary Rose, I said, as we were praying together, I said, gosh, imagine just the love that these children feel surrounded by, let's say it was 8 couples praying out loud. And, so that goes to, obviously, so we're Catholic, but, serving, I think, Witness to Love is providing something that the nation needs, right? The nation needs homes and families again to be an essential, fundamental, more than an institution, a reality, because without it, I think we are in this place. I remember years ago when I was in college, a mentor of mine said, and maybe you've heard this term before, Kathryn, he said, rules without relationships lead to rebellion. Mm-hmm. And, many of us who, we live in South Louisiana, we travel the country. We know that many families have been broken up, right, by divorce, whatever it was. Also just children just leaving the communities that that families have been in for generations, and gone off to places where, it's been difficult, so when we see a lot of sort of a breakdown of a family. And so Witness to Love is really getting back to, I think, a primary need in society, which is for people to feel safe and loved. But foremost, I think marriage, though, serving a movement of couples back to marriage, is going back to something that's so essential.
Because it's not just, we're not just preparing those couples who
Right.
are coming
We're not
to
preparing
get
them.
married.
We say we're not preparing them for a wedding.
Right.
We're preparing them
for
for
marriage.
a covenant.
Right.
Really, a matrimony.
And we're not just preparing that engaged couple, but we're preparing the mentor couple who's walking with them. Right. And so we also, there's a study that came out recently that said, you know, why do children stay Catholic when they are grown up? And Kara at Georgetown did this study, and it just came out, and they basically said it's not necessarily because of youth groups or Catholic schools or you know, all of those things that parents think, oh, if I just get my kid to do X, Y, and Z, they're going to stay Catholic. They said that children stay Catholic to the degree to which their faith was the source of warmth within their homes.
Mm.
And so I was just thinking about this during the rosary yesterday, all these families surrounding all these kids in beautiful weather. I mean, there was like chickens running around, and there was a pig that literally came laid down next to the kids. I was like, oh gosh, but it was really sweet, fun, friendly pig. He just
I
wanted
know,
to ear
Kathryn, it
scratch.
doesn't happen in New York,
Yeah,
right?
this is not a New York thing.
No,
And I kid you not, what the 3-year-old tried to put lipstick on the pig. I kid you not.
Oh,
That's an
stop it.
expression. Have you heard that expression?
Yeah, yes, I'm fully
yeah.
aware of the expression, but I've never seen it.
Yes, I've never seen it either, but I almost saw it because, and the daddy's like, don't do it, don't put your lip, don't. She had a little lip gloss on a wand. She was getting ready to put it on the pig. Anyway, so, but you could see it was warmth, right? The rosary, that time of prayer and fellowship, and just sitting there and enjoying God's beautiful sunshine all together, and all the families just kind of, you know, just smiling. And one of the parents, you know, he was a grandfather there. His older daughter had come in from out of town, and she was in town with her kids. And during the rosary, the grown-up adult daughter came and like sat on her dad's knee during the rosary. And then all the grandkids were like playing on the ground in front of them. And I just thought, wow, how beautiful. Like when you're really raised in the faith, even when you're an adult, you're still a daughter. And you're still like, you know, treating your father like a father, and that you're just enjoying saying the rosary. It was just so beautiful to me. You know, especially coming from a home where, you know, that just wasn't always the case. It was just so beautiful. It was so powerful. And so I could just see, I felt like God was illustrating for us what this study was saying, that you remain Catholic, you stick with the faith of your parents, to the degree to which that faith was the source of the warmth in the home. And so that's what we're trying to do with these engaged couples and mentor couples, that the engaged couples really, especially since they didn't experience it, they have no idea how to do this. But the mentor couple that they choose, that they say, I see something I want, they're able to kind of pass that on. They're able to go into the mentor's home and, you know, pray with them and see them at the dinner table with their kids, and just try to, okay, what is this going to look like in my home? So it's something precious and very difficult to pass on in today's world.
Well, and that gets me back to that March for Life panel, where one student from Columbia pushed back a little bit, and he's like, look, I hear you. I want to get married, but like, how do I even begin to think about that when, you know, well, these schools are teaching us all these kinds of crazy things about pronouns and changing our genders, and the idea of like a boy and a girl dating and getting married is so exotic. Where do you suggest kids even start?
I mean, I think it would be, I mean, there's a number of things, obviously, but they can, you know, how there's, you know, different clubs on college campuses. Have a club, you know, I don't want to say a marriage club, but like a building the future club or something like that. You know, just a club of people who says, you know, gosh, this is important for society. What can we do to help, you know, be a part of that cause, right? Because especially when you're talking about, you know, students at Ivy League schools, you know, the pressure there to, succeed and make money and pay back your bills and get a great job. I mean, those are all important, but studies show that, people who are married end up having better jobs because they're working harder, right? Because they know that, I'm gonna have a family I have to support. So there's these things come together. I think there could be people like you, or academics and people who are sort of practically on the front lines who could band together and help these students. There's Ethics and Public Policy Center, Heritage Foundation. I mean, there's so many groups I think that could come together and really just support these young students and have the ability to have dialogue, ability to have conversation, because you're right, they're under a lot of pressure, and it's not the right kind of pressure.
And
I think it's
one of the
also,
things we told them was to just find a group of friends who share your values, and just stick with them. And it doesn't have to be a formal group or anything like that.
yeah, I
One,
would say also from my perspective, just for me, I would say, every person needs to really evaluate their roots, where they came from, where, for example, like just my story. I grew up here in South Louisiana, Mary Rose, Virginia. Went to finish college and grad school up in Boston, and it was a cultural change. I loved it. I made some really great friends, and then we lived in the Washington D.C. area. So I was away from home for a good 10 years or so, 11 years. And I think when it was clear that God was calling me to be married and have a family, I really thought, God, what's the best place for me to be in, to really, and the just for me, I chose to come home. And now you could always evaluate and say, maybe I'll have more business opportunities. Maybe I'll have more, all these what ifs, what if I'm around more people, more affluent, more educated, more whatever it is.
More opportunities.
And I tell you, as we've been married now almost 15 years and obviously have 6 children. And I'm grateful that we came back home. Obviously, we have the opportunity to travel and to go visit, different friends, different parts of the country. But it's just good to be rooted and to be committed and to know that you are establishing and being a part of a chain that's actually like making communities better. And so I think that one of the problems, just from my perspective, or opportunities, is that many people don't consider, where they're from. I could make the case for anywhere in the country that, well, maybe the economics would be better somewhere else. But I do see the benefit in being the place where for generations you're known and understood. And that just an extension of really good, solid family life. So when people think like go and get married and have children, absolutely. I would say making the case for marriage this week is so important because marriage and family are one of the most humanizing things. Everybody's like so pro-human, right? Let me just express myself and become the best version of myself. You can never be the best version of yourself if you're by yourself. It doesn't mean that some people are not called to live, lives in the world where they're single, but for most people, they need to be within a community with friendship and fellowship, accountability. And most of us were really designed for this covenant of matrimony, wouldn't you say? So it's reversing a trend where so many people are delaying that commitment. And it's challenging. We're working with obviously thousands of engaged couples. Just today, I was talking to, a gentleman who's around 40 and he's getting married, and it's really challenging. He's taking up a lot of questions, and he's like, Ryan, what's your thought on that? He said, just be honest. So he put me, I said, I'll be honest with you, because I heard the same thing as well. If you delay marriage and remain single for so long, you accumulate what I would say is single people's habits, which, particularly if you're not like suiting yourself to be a part of a community and sharing life, it's to make that leap. And so for those who are called to marriage, but it's an important thing. I hope that makes sense, Kathryn.
Totally. And one of the things we said to these Ivy League kids, some of whom voiced that they were Catholic or Christian, and like, I apologized on behalf of the Catholic Church because we haven't been teaching the riches of what the faith teaches about human anthropology ever since Humanae Vitae and the sexual revolution. And so, and also in Catholic education, so often, if you go to college prep school or something, they don't talk about marriage because, as you were saying, even in Catholic schools, there's kind of the same attitude as in an Ivy League school where it's like, all right, success. And so no one's even talking to these young people about marriage. And that's why what you're offering to the culture is so important. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is, so you don't just do the marriage mentoring, you do other things. I don't remember if I told you, Mary Rose, we talked recently, but I was at St. Patrick's in DC, also during the March for Life weekend to go to Sunday Mass, and I witnessed the end of a convalidation mass. And
Wow.
so convalidation is such a beautiful gift and mercy. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how you help with that?
Absolutely. No, and I do remember that conversation we had. That was so beautiful. Like when you said the priest was taking pictures of the couple
Right,
to
exactly.
come, and like just you could tell the love he had for them and how excited he was for them. And that is so beautiful. So a convalidation is basically where, you know, a couple who is one or both is Catholic and they get married by a justice of the peace. So it's not a sacrament. It's not in the church. It's not a covenant. It's not full of grace, right? It could be a naturally good thing, but it's not a sacrament. And so
Getting married on the beach
yeah.
by someone, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Who's not a priest.
Now, if two Protestants got married on a beach by a Protestant minister, that's another thing. You know, that is, you know, that's okay. But in it for Catholics, if one or both parties of the couple is Catholic, you have to get married, by a priest or a deacon in a Catholic church. And obviously the words are very important, right? The vows, the till death do you part. And so we realized how many couples would come to the church. Maybe they've been married 7 years, 12 years, 20 years. They've been married civilly. And then they would come and say, hey, Father, you know, our 7-year-old's making their first communion. So I think we would like to make things right, get our marriage blessed, just tell us what we need to do. And then the priest or deacon would say, well, you know, you've been married 7 years. You know more about marriage than I do, and probably more than most people. So why don't you just come see me in my office and I'll do a blessing. So that is, you know, till now, honestly, the majority of the time when a couple would come forward, that's some version of what they would receive. Many churches and dioceses would not even record it in their records. It was just something that was done. And that's gotten better recently. But the preparation these couples receive is little to nothing. But the reality is, marriage isn't just about life skills. The sacrament of matrimony isn't just about, you know, can you communicate and balance a checkbook? It's about living your life together, becoming one, you know, opening yourself up to God's plan, understanding what the church teaches about the sacrament. I mean, all of that. And if you've been living separate from that, you know, civilly married, you feel like you're kind of on, a lot of these couples will say, I feel like I was sort of outside the church community, right? I wasn't fully in, I wasn't fully receiving, I wasn't integrated into the church community. So they're kind of living on the peripheries of the church community. Often, even if they come to church, they're not sort of plugged into church. And so we developed a version of Witness to Love specifically for these couples, focused on building community, on healing, sometimes on blending families, because often one maybe got married, didn't wait for an annulment, and then got married on the beach, and then is, you know, now coming back in. And so we found that these couples, they weren't just coming for the pretty church. They were coming for the sacrament. They were coming for the grace and the gift that God had to offer them. And so giving them sort of the fast pass and just blessing them, you know, and them not even realizing they were receiving a sacrament, was such a disservice. And so having a process that we developed through Witness to Love and working with so many of these couples and so many priests who are passionate about serving these couples, it's amazing. So the videos are testimonies from couples who had a convalidation, right? And them talking about, what is this grace like in my life now that I'm living this out? So it's a beautiful process. We have even campaigns for parishes, and they can say, I want to reach every civilly married Catholic couple in my parish boundaries. And we have yard sites, social media campaigns, everything, pew cards. So these are all resources. And this initiative had been funded by our Sunday Visitor Institute. And it was just amazing. And actually, we launched that 5 years ago last week. in New York, actually. So that it's been amazing to see the gift that has been to so many couples and to hear the stories coming back. So it's been amazing.
Well, and as I mentioned earlier, you have a recently published book, you have an app. How do people access these resources? Why should they access these resources? How can they help them, including people who are not necessarily going to church every Sunday?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about Witness to Love. So we have a website. It's just witnesstolove.org. And I think for your listeners, with an understanding the National Review audience is someone who's a part of that audience, the care and concern about the Republic, about saving the Republic, and we're serious. Marriage is a fundamental pathway to restoring and saving our Republic, our democracy, our ability to just have conversations and to dialogue and to debate honestly and take up issues with truthfulness. But Witness to Love is, we would say, is a movement to turn the hearts of the young people and even older people back into the family and seeing it as a fundamental pathway to restoration. So Witness to Love started here in South Louisiana as marriage it's spread throughout the continent and beyond, but it's come about through a lot of enthusiasm on our part, and at the time, our children, who traveled in minivans throughout almost every interstate and back road in the United States. And so that book you were showing the path to family missionary discipleship really highlights the stories of families who care deeply about each other, about our nation, their communities, and doing what only families can do, which is to love each other and show that there's a renewal there, and it's beautiful. Witness to Love is making the case. It's moving the needle when it comes to what we can be again as people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, absolutely. And so I think for us, it's been a gift, and we have a podcast. We have all kinds of resources that we've curated for different audiences, marriage enrichment. We have the first book we wrote, Witness to Love: How to Help the Next Generation of Marriages Survive and Thrive. And you, Kathryn, were the first person to actually do a news article on that, to do that interview. So it's awesome. Here we go, book 2. But no, I think what's different, and people always joke that every time we give a talk, somebody will come up to us inevitably and say, "Who gave you a microphone?" And first I thought it was like an insult. But then what I realized, when people would start kind of following it with their comments, they'd say, you're a normal person. You understand what the average person is going through. You're not like a public speaker in the sense of, you have a circuit and you give the same talk over and over. You are actually with people, telling stories on the ground, and sharing that with the rest of us. And, so they're right. We're not as polished as maybe somebody who gives the same talk on a circuit over and over, but everywhere we go, I feel like God puts in our path, couples with powerful stories, and that we can kind of dialogue with and process and share. And it's just, I think we learn so much more from talking to couples all over the country than we do, maybe just reading news articles or watching TV, or, you know what I mean? It's going into homes, having dinner with people, hearing, their struggles, their challenges, their witness, and the things that God has done in their life and in their marriage that is just so profound.
And I think, there's a principle we always kind of go back to, those of us witness to love, or any apostolate or ministry. We know that authentic formation in the faith and in character development only moves at the pace of a friendship.
Right.
And so Witness to Love takes a very classical perspective on friendship, deep roots in Aristotle's worldview, St. Thomas Aquinas, all those people that really understood that virtue and character was essential. But so our motto is really interesting. 50% of what we do, our team of maybe around 10 people, is serving parishes, in churches. We have Catholic, but also non-denominational parishes or churches and evangelical churches using Witness to Love. And so they are at a grassroots level working with volunteers. Last year, we had around 147,000 volunteer hours. And why I say that is because we had, over 4,000 mentor couples open up their homes to welcome in the next generation of marriages. And what they do is they give them 15 hours at least per couple. So people who care about the United States, remember, people used to volunteer years ago, but that has fallen out. But we have shown, I could show people the data, that Witness Love is serving a renewal in volunteering, in opening up their homes to research. And I just think those 147,000 hours, we're so grateful for. We pray for these families doing this every night, opening up their homes to millennials and Zoomers. No offense to millennials and Zoomers. I'm just saying for the generation that didn't really grow up with like meals
Right.
at a table together, just
Right.
human things. So what I say all this because our team is really working hard to make that happen. So 50% of what we do is providing these materials to couples, and the other 50% that sustains us is donations. And I appreciate you being on our board and all our volunteer board members that are helping us to make the case. And so we're providing, as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, a renewal of support to the next generation of marriages. So it's very basic. We started off with that motto, just Mary Rose and I. But it has grown, and we're so grateful for everyone who's a part of this, not only in English, but also in Spanish, as well as Vietnamese and French. And so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
And I
so
know because I'm on your board that there's just constant demands, and you've been growing, and it's so beautiful to see. Yours is one of the most encouraging boards I'm on, as I think I've told you. And as you were saying, Mary Rose, we get inundated with headlines about all the terrible things that are happening in the world. And again, going back to Dobbs and the culture and loneliness, we hear it's a pandemic, suicides are up. Why is that? Because people are alone, because people aren't accompanying one another. And for one of the most encouraging things I often hear is about some Catholic universities where there are professors who open their homes, who have families, who open their homes to students. My friend Mary Eberstadt wrote in a book, how the West really lost God, about how even like we just celebrated Christmas, the idea of the Holy Family, what is that if you didn't grow up in a family with a mom and a dad, right? And so to be able to see that, to really witness, to love and share that and open, and if you're coming from a Christian perspective, the radical hospitality of the gospel, right? That's what this is, and it's so critical. And you also mentioned, Mary Rose, people saying maybe you're not the most polished speaker. I think you're pretty polished, the two of you, actually. But by the way, for the record, my credentials with your kids is that I heard a rooster for the first time. So in the house, so I'm the rooster lady. But you're living the life. You're not preaching from books, or you both are very educated, but you're living the practicalities of it, and so you can share in that real struggle with couples. Can you talk a little bit about some of the testimonies in the book that maybe would surprise people or particularly encourage people?
I like kind of also, just maybe before I answer that specific thing, is when you're talking about the family, and I think it's part of aspect of the book, is that we have 6 children. And we're trying to find the way, and I think these stories in this book are expressing the way of how we want to keep our children in the faith and a part of a family. And so that's really the hard work that's there. And John Paul II says, Christ doesn't impose, he proposes. So I think with the story in this book is about proposing, right?
right. All the stories are, people we know, people we've worked with, and kind of their testimony. People who've lost a spouse, people who've struggled financially, people who've had a conversion, people who've done missionary work. It's really seeing God acting in different people's lives, and some of them are more like testimonies with wisdom. One of my favorite ones is Corey Howitt. And he is the founder of I Give Catholic, and he's the head of the Catholic Foundation in New Orleans. And he is just a beautiful person, and he and his family, they're so wonderful. And his story is about his children and teaching them to tithe. And this might not sound like an exciting story, but it was just when you read the sort of the kindness and generosity that you can just kind of comes through the pages. But he talks about how like teaching his kids to tithe. So, he and his wife could just, choose a few charities to tithe to and be done with it, and the kids would never even know. But he gives each kid, I think it was like $100 at the end of the year, and says, here's $100. Is there $100 or $100 check? Okay, I want you to like pray and discern where we're going to donate this. What are we going to do with this $100? So they each would get to sort of help him and his wife, like I said, where is this money going to go to? So to teach them really to be good stewards and to tithe, and to, that this money does not belong to us. It belongs to God. And imagine if we all did that. Imagine if all of our children, something about really, I'd say anybody age 4 and below, 40 and below, tithing just isn't part of what we do.
Right.
We might buy tickets to an event, or we tithe, but a lot of times, tithing could look like volunteering. Tithing could look like not just giving money somewhere, but going and helping there. It's more people like our parents' age that are committed to tithing. And so what is this going to look like? And so it's, in Witness to Love, it's also important that the engaged couple is going to church with the mentor couple, and the engaged couple sees the mentor couple putting money in the collection basket, right? Just like, oh, wow, tithing, giving to God. Never even thought about this, So I think, that's one. There's also the story of the friends of ours where the husband passed away. He was involved in anti-euthanasia legislation. Do you know what I'm talking about in the book?
Yes.
Going blank on the name.
Kristen Hansen,
Yes.
JJ Hansen.
JJ Hansen.
Yes. So his wife,
sorry, parent brain.
yeah.
Oh, don't worry at all.
They came to our home a few years, about a year and a half before JJ passed away. And it was so moving. Shared their testimony and his encounter with goodness and truth, before his passing, when he was really kind of, and they were just remarkable. And
and JJ, if people don't know, he had brain cancer. It was at the same time as People magazine was profiling Brittany Maynard
correct,
and
California.
assisted suicide groups. She had left her state to go take advantage of assisted suicide. They had the same cancer, and he was given a few months to live. Kristen and JJ had a baby in the time where he didn't avail himself as assisted suicide. It was just an amazing story.
Yes. So their story is one of the stories, and it's a very powerful story. I mean, we have the whole gamut of like funny stories, sad stories, encouraging stories, gut punch stories, but really like we all have a similar but different path, and all of us are kind of on a path to God our Father. But how the turns that path takes are, different for everyone. So the book really has something for everyone in it. It's very accessible. It's taking all the things the church has to offer with regards to marriage, family, and evangelization, and making it accessible for the average reader.
Well, and I was thinking of you guys and the book and the ministry yesterday, actually, when I was witnessing a Dominican sister take her final vows, because the prioress was talking about the importance of vocation and making a commitment to vocation. And I mean, that's very much a part of what your ministry is. And also, encouraging people to just discern what it is God's calling you to and commit to that. So maybe not everyone, couples open their doors to will become married. That's what the majority will, but they may join the priesthood or religious life, or there also have there's a book my friend Luann Zerlo wrote called Single for a Greater Purpose, about how maybe for a time and culture being single is something that God is calling people to in a committed way. And so opening your home to people helps them not be alone, right? the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is, so you recently were appointed to a Vatican appointment.
That's
Um,
right.
and which is important, I think, in a lot of ways. So you're not, this is homegrown, but the church needs it, and even the Vatican recognizes that. And obviously we know there are all these controversies and things like that, but there's also work being done in the church to really support marriage, and you're an important part of that. What's that been like for you?
It's been fun. It's been a surprise. It's been exciting. The dicastery that we are appointed as consultants to is the dicastery for laity, family, and life. So it's, marriage, family, pro-life, all of the things we've been talking about today. All of the things we've very much been involved in. I think the reason it was a surprise is because usually appointments to those roles are people who are more, in the academic realm, right? And like you said, it's not that we have no credentials, it's just that it's not all we do, right? We're not university professors or, uh, graduate school theologians or something like that. And we're a married couple, and we're, very much on the ground. And so I'm very encouraged by the appointment. Even if I was looking at another couple in our same situation, similar situation, having been appointed, I would be like, wow, they're married, they're working with couples, they haven't removed themselves to just study marriage. They're actually,
Right.
doing all of this. So it was both a surprise and encouragement. The people from that dicastery that we've worked with over the past, I'd say 3 years that we've been working with that dicastery, World Meeting of Families, and then the conference, where do we stand with Amoris Laetitia? So we've had, lots of wonderful interactions with that dicastery. We just never thought that this was going to happen. So it's been amazing. We had a marriage catechumenate summit last summer in Houston, and we did some work with them in preparation for that, and it was incredible. And one bishop came up to us during that summit and just said, "I feel like the church hears me," and so it's not just us, like the laity. It's also, priests and bishops and everyone else, basically, feeling like the feedback that they're giving to this cause, to this mission, of supporting marriage and family is being heard and is happening.
And it's really about how do you rebuild a marriage culture in the
Sure.
church
Yes,
and in the
100%.
culture, and all hands on deck. And
Yes.
one thing I wanted to ask you, kind of an elephant in the room too, is obviously there have been all these controversies about same-sex blessings and things like that. And for people who are just wondering, like, how do I be merciful in this? How do I talk about marriage, share about marriage, but be merciful at the same time? What's your advice to them?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
one of the things I wanted to add is,
Mhm.
I've been involved in ministries over the years where I've just been so moved, some of it being like media training, some of it being just other evangelization work, where I'm just so moved by how many Catholics and other Christians just don't want to hurt people more. They know that people are hurt, and so they don't want to pour salt in open wounds. And so I do think that's a question on a lot of people's hearts.
I mean, our experience with those struggling with same-sex attraction, or just not, they don't feel like they're struggling with it, that they've kind of just like, there's no such thing. Like I even have family members who they would consider themselves, transgender, like that there's gender is just, purely a physical thing, right? So we're going back to what is the philosophical error here. What is it when you think like spirit and body have nothing to do with each other? Come on.
Arianism or something like
Is it
that.
Arianism? But like, like we're a soul like trapped in a body, right? But we're not, right? And so I think the same errors, there's nothing new under the sun. The same things happen over and over. And when you don't grow up in a healthy home where you see what a mother and father look like and feel like, if you have any sort of challenges or questions, what's going to happen is that you just start to question everything. And what we want to avoid is like jumping on people who are already hurting and saying, you know, nothing for you, you know, we can't,
Right.
we can't love you, we can't bless you, we can't include you, right? And so obviously there's a line to walk where you want to extend God's love and mercy to everyone, but you can't change the truth in order to do that.
Yeah, you know, and I think, and I'll complete disclosure, we're not experts in
Right.
when it comes to, you know, individuals who kind of coped and managed or live a life of same-sex attractions. You know, however, I think a recent insight that we've gained in our work in Witness to Love came from another board member, Dr. Peter Martin. So I would say we're very much, you know, traditional and scholastic in our perspective when it comes to anthropology. So meaning that, you know, we go a classical worldview. And if you are Catholic, you know, or Episcopal, so you might have understood this comment that grace builds upon nature, right? It's a long-standing understanding that grace, God's grace, sacramental grace in particular, can only be operative when you have the right nature in place. Okay, but Dr. Peter Martin the other day highlighted that grace builds upon nature, but it also builds upon nurture. And it was an interesting insight. And that was he didn't trace that to anything, but it helped with that sort of understand at the heart of Witness to Love is the principle of attachment theory. And it's how relationships, the way we're raised and brought up, either provide a sense of like strength and security, or there's ambivalence or anxiety or different sort of things and that sort. The best thing that we can provide a Witness to Love, and the best answer we can give, is that a strong marriage and family is a gift to everyone. And I think that's the gift of the sacrament of matrimony in any vocation, is that it serves a renewal, and it serves as a light, and it serves as a path of human flourishing. You know,
and also I have also, again, a close family member who, you know, this is a struggle and a challenge for them. And on one hand, like, you know, I know he feels more able to go into church, and he'll say, and light a candle, because he knows that he's still welcome. Whereas before he felt like he had to sneak into church to light a candle. So I understand what some of these very hurt, you know, people are going through, and they might not describe themselves as a hurt person, but right, if you feel like you're afraid to go into church to light a candle, obviously there's some things, real or perceived, that you're struggling with regards to the church. So you know, I think there is, in God's love, a way to welcome people without changing the church's teaching. And so obviously that's not our expertise, but, you know, I have heard it kind of the challenges from both sides of, you know, how can you even begin to help someone understand the church's teaching when they don't even feel like they can come into church, you know? And so you know, I think we're cracking open the door, but it's a little squeaky, and I'm not sure, you know, if there's a better way to do this, obviously. And confusion, anything that leads to confusion is obviously not helping the conversation.
We are definitely in a moment in the church's history where we're not in Christendom anymore, but this is much more of an apostolic age.
Yeah.
You know, just the other day I was talking, it's marriage, so it's National Marriage Week right now, right? And so, and right in the middle of National Marriage Week, but when it ends, is Valentine's Day and also Ash Wednesday.
On the same day.
Same day. Do you know that Ash Wednesday is the day that the churches are the most full? And across the United States. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's not really Easter or Christmas. It's Ash Wednesday. Maybe they're not all receiving communion. Maybe they're just getting the ashes. It is a really interesting thing that we're reminded that ultimately God is in charge,
right?
And God is a father, and I don't know.
And they're all coming for blessings,
and
right?
They're coming for blessings. They're coming for the ashes.
Even non-Catholics, you know, go to church sometimes. They want to get those ashes. There's a hunger for being blessed, for being seen, for being received by the Father, and like no matter. I remember during the pandemic, our friend Father Matt Williams, he was on a street corner in Boston giving people, you know, just, it was like mobile ashes.
I just wonder in this situation, just thinking out loud, is that, you know, there's a place, we don't have the answers for everything, but I know who does, and it's God.
Yes.
And his presence, when we are completely coming to him in humility and honesty, that he is the truth, the way, and the life, that he will fill in those gaps in a way that maybe our human limitations cannot.
Right.
My approach.
Well, and going back to the mission of Witness to Love, I mean, it does go back to being loving and hospitable, and showing the gospel to people. And one of the things, again, to go back to the March for Life, that I talk about a lot when I give pro-life talks is, do the young people in our lives know that they could come to us if they found themselves in an unplanned pregnancy? And sometimes
Correct.
I worry, if we're pro-life, if we're Catholic, we're the last people they would come to. And I think part of what you're building with Witness to Love, what you're contributing to building, is this renewed, as you said, Ryan, culture where people actually see love, and they're not afraid to walk into a church to light a candle, right? Because they don't feel judged. You don't have to change the truth, as you were saying, Mary Rose, to simply welcome people to the table, or into the
Right.
door. And
And a Witness to Love is committed to that, Witness to Love, and with the background that we're coming into, the value of both clarity and charity, right? And only Jesus Christ is the perfect left brain and right brain individual, right? So only God can do that perfectly. So we have to trust him.
And one last thing I wanted to add is we went to a presentation recently with Brad Wilcox, and he has a great book out right now that's, well, it's about to come out on, why people should get married. Do something radical, go get married. I don't remember the actual title. It's a great
I think
title.
it's called Get Married.
Okay, perfect. Get married. That's easy to remember. But he was talking about how today, young people today, 1 out of 3 will never marry. And 1 out of 4 will never have children. That has never been the case in the history of the world.
Right.
I mean, it's remarkable. We were sitting down with a couple last night visiting, and they have three children, and whatever the life choices and discernments of the kid, they were thinking really they would never have grandchildren, because their kids had basically each one, for different reasons, basically said, we're not going to be having kids. And finally, one of the kids finally said, yeah, we are thinking of having a kid or 2. But we're going to be changing our last name. Instead of taking the husband, the husband's name, they're going to take part of the husband's name and part of the wife's name and make that their new last name. So I'm just telling you, we live in such a crazy world. Like, genealogists are going to have a really difficult time 100 years from now. There's this whole conversation about what we call dead branches, where, for family names are going to disappear. People will be in nursing homes and who never had children or grandchildren. There's just this loneliness epidemic that is only just beginning. And
and it goes back to what Ryan was saying about rootedness,
right.
and our need for that. And
100%.
Going back to that March for Life conference I was telling you about. So I was walking in, it was at the Museum of the Bible, and I was walking in, and who was behind me but Brad Wilcox and his family. And I didn't realize it was him. I've known him for years. He's, a policy guy, academic, but he was kind of casual, and all his kids were there. And I just thought they were a family visiting the museum, and it was just wonderful. But he did have a breakout session opposite mine, but both of our messages were get married at the end of the day.
That's awesome.
Well, I need to let the two of you go, but thank you so much, Mary Rose and Ryan. Again, your ministry is Witness to Love, and there's an app and there's a book. Well, there are 2 books, but the latest one is The Road to Family Missionary Discipleship, Forming Marriages and Families to Share the Joy of the Gospel. Sorry for butchering that. But I think people will be inspired by many of the testimonies in here. And I encourage people from all faith perspectives to take a look at what you're offering, because it is so encouraging and so helpful. And so thank you for your time, and thank you for all that you're doing. And I look forward to our next board meeting.
Thank you, Kathryn.
God bless.
Thank you.